The Nile Valley. Maybe somewhere a little closer to home. No pressure, of course. Only if you'd like. Now close your eyes or don't. And let's begin. Before the curtains stir, before even the birds find their voice, you are already being watched. Not directly, no one dares, but the servants outside your chamber are listening for the first rustle of cloth, the quiet shift of bedding, the subtle change in breath that signals you've awakened. You are 16. Menenit, one of many names whispered in the marble hallways of Thebes. But yours is newer still, unfamiliar on their tongues, still too soft to echo. You lie still, knowing what comes next. The air in your chamber is cool despite the late spring heat. The limestone beneath the tiles holds the night's cold like memory. Your blanket smells faintly of lavender pressed between linen folds the evening before. You do not stretch. You do not sigh. Those belong to another life, one with freedom. There is a quiet knock. One, then pause. Then two more. It's not a request. It's the rhythm of your new morning. The door opens not with a creak, but with intention. Two maids enter barefoot, their hair bound, their eyes lowered. They each carry a wide ceramic bowl, rimmed with indigo and filled nearly to the top. Steam curls upward, carrying the faint scent of lotus roots soaked overnight. The warmth of it is not just for comfort. It's a signal that you are still worthy of the day. They do not speak. Speaking would disturb the ritual. One kneels beside your bed, holding the bowl as if it were an offering. The other gently folds back your coverlet. The room remains in shadow, lit only by the faintest orange bleeding through the carved shutters. It's not yet dawn, but your obligations don't care about the sun. You sit up slowly, not from fatigue, but from design. Every movement is measured. You lower your feet into the shallow silver basin, set just below your mattress. Your toes curl reflexively at the warmth, but you say nothing. Your face is cleansed with a cloth, soaked in the lotus water. It's not rubbed, it's pressed. First your cheeks, then your eyelids, your chin, your collarbone. The cloth is turned after every touch, so that no part of your skin is ever cleaned with the same spot twice. No corner of your skin goes unattended. The basin is then taken away, the used water carried out to be discarded in a section of the garden only designated for former royal purification. Even the disposal has rules. Historians still debate whether this obsessive sanitation stemmed from religious purity laws, or was simply the court's way of keeping order through ritual. Perhaps it was both. What's certain is that it wasn't about you. Your comfort is not the priority. Your cleanliness is. One of the servants returns with a thin white towel held between her forearms, never clutched in her hands. The towel has been warmed against fired bricks since midnight. It does not touch the floor. It does not touch her body. It touches you and you alone. She begins to pat your hands, drying each finger individually. You're not sure when this started feeling normal. A month ago, when you first arrived, you flinched at this. Now your fingers are steady, your breathing timed with the rhythm of the cloth. Outside the window, the palm fronds begin to whisper. The ibis calls. Somewhere in the outer courtyard, a water jug tips and spills, not an accident, but a cue. Your next attendants are waiting. Today's robe is a soft linen, dyed with crushed woad and fig. It was spun by women in Abydos and sewn here in Thebes under supervision. It has never touched bare skin. It has never seen the sun. It will touch you first, but only after the old robe has been removed. That robe, the one you wore yesterday, is considered unclean by morning light. You don't change it yourself, of course. One maid loosens the belt. The other gently pulls the cloth away from your shoulders. Careful not to brush your hair, careful not to expose your chest for more than a second. A third enters with a long-handled basket lined with lavender leaves and mint. The robe is placed inside. The lid is shut. It will be burned if deemed too worn to wash. And it often is. You rise. The new robe is unfolded not in the room, but just outside, and only after the incense cone has been lit. The scent crushed myrrh and dried tamarind, chosen for its grounding quality. You inhale through your nose, out through your mouth, just as you were taught. This is your moment of transition from sleeping body to visible vessel, because that's what you are now. Not a girl, a symbol. The new robe rests lightly on your frame. The linen doesn't cling at drapes. But that too has meaning. Loose fabric was considered not just modest, but divine. The gods were believed to walk in flowing cloth. A robe too tight would suggest arrogance. A robe too loose would suggest neglect. Yours fits like prayer. As you begin walking toward the next room, the chamber where the real cleansing begins, you catch a glimpse of your own reflection in the polished copper mirror. Not a full view, just a whisper of it. A girl with wide shoulders, a braid still damp, eyes that blink slower now. You're not allowed to speak until the oiling begins. But if you could, you might ask, does anyone ever get used to this? That question never leaves your lips. It doesn't have to. Because the woman waiting in the next room has seen that look 100 times. She was once you. And she knows, just as you are about to learn, that this day is only beginning. And by nightfall, you won't just be clean. You'll be silent and glistening and exhausted in a way that has nothing to do with sleep. And still, you'll rise again tomorrow. The robe that awaits you has never felt skin. Even now, as you step slowly into the second chamber, you can sense it nearby, resting not on a hook or bench, but floating gently in the hands of the linen attendant. She does not hold it directly. The robe is cradled in a length of soft silk, twisted at both ends so that not even her wrists brush against its folds. Her gaze stays low, not from deference but from practice. In this place, eyes are trained to study shadows rather than faces. And linen, especially this linen, is sacred by proxy. Your steps are soft but purposeful. The stone beneath your feet has been rubbed smooth by hundreds of mornings like this one, yet somehow it still feels cold. There are no words exchanged as you approach, only a subtle shifting of the weight in her arms as she prepares for the handover. She waits until the other servant has finished bundling your sleep robe into its receiving cloth. It is folded quickly but precisely without ceremony, because its value expired the moment your skin left it. It will be taken to the dye yard, washed possibly, more likely burned. If a single mark is found along the hemdust sweat oil, it will never return. It might surprise you how disposable beauty becomes when perfection is the expectation. The fresh robe is unrolled before you like a scroll. The fabric is warm-pressed hours ago between slabs of terracotta heated with coal. The scent of fig leaf and crushed date lingers faintly at the seams, woven into the fibers from the washing vat. No two robes ever smell quite the same. Each batch of linen was washed separately, soaked in water, pulled from different wells, some filtered through reeds, others drawn from clay cisterns lined with ash. And depending on the dye master, one might add slivers of cinnamon bark to discourage insects, another a touch of sandalwood, just to appease a personal superstition. Historians still argue whether these scents were meant to mask the person or celebrate them. Some claim the practice stemmed from ritual cleansing before religious observance. Others believe it was merely hygiene elevated to obsession. But you don't ask why. Not today. Today you lift your arms. The robe is placed over your shoulders in a single fluid movement, not dropped, not adjusted. The shape has been pre-folded to meet your form exactly. The weight settles across your collarbone like a second skin, cool at first, then warm. Your elbows disappear beneath the fabric. It reaches your wrists without slouching, and falls to your ankles without sweeping the floor. There are no buttons, no pins, just tension and fold tension and balance. She steps back once the robe is on. And now another enters the folder. This one carries nothing in her hands. Her job is not to clothe, but to check. She circles you slowly, watching how the cloth lays across your shoulder blades, whether the pleats fall symmetrically over your hips. She notices one corner, dipping too low along your left heel. Without a word, she lifts the edge, folds it once vertically, then twice across the center seam. The correction takes less than 3 seconds. She repeats the same motion on the other side, not because it's needed, but because balance matters more than truth. Some women find this moment humiliating, the sensation of being studied like marble. You've learned to treat it as inevitable. After all, this is not your robe. This is Pharaoh's robe, merely borrowing your body. The folder finishes her loop and gives a barely there nod. That's all it takes. The two women exit. The last to leave carefully adjusts the hem at the threshold so it doesn't catch beneath the stone lintel. Every movement, even departure, is part of the ritual. You remain standing, because now comes the moment you never thought would matter: the rearrangement. The neckline must be recentered to expose only a half finger of collarbone. The sleeves, though long, must not cover the wrists completely. The fabric must sit taut, but not pull when you move. You adjust nothing yourself. Instead, the waiting girl, new to the service, steps forward with a brass-tipped rod and gently lifts a section of the robe beneath your chin. She folds it once, tucks it into place. Her hands don't touch you. The rod does all the work. This is how one learns to serve without sin. There's a pause. A small mirror is brought copper-polished until it gleams like rose gold. You glance at your reflection. A girl draped in softness, made firm only by rules. And then, as if pulled by unseen thread, the rest begins to fall into place. Another attendant appears, this one carrying a strip of cloth, no wider than 2 fingers. It is the sash dyed from pomegranate rind and stretched between wooden pegs for 2 weeks to set its hue. The sash is more than decoration. It determines your standing. Looser for those of lower rank, tight and symmetrical for those considered watchworthy. Yours is neither too snug nor too lax. You've learned how to signal quiet competence, just enough to be respected, not enough to be envied. The sash is tied without a bow. The ends are tucked flat against your back. No part of the knot should be visible from the front. If it is, the implication is laziness. That matters more than it should. At last, the outer cloth, what some might call a shawl, is brought out. It is not worn, but carried draped across your arms like a sleeping dove. You will hold it until mid-morning, when the sun is high enough to demand shade. Even that, too, is choreographed. One servant, older than the rest, approaches now, with a small, flat basket lined with folded linen squares. She begins laying them on a nearby stool. These are your cloths for the day, some for hands, some for face, others for the neck and shoulders. They are not interchangeable. Mixing them would be unthinkable. And yes, there is someone whose job is to fold them. You met her once, just once. A tiny woman with thick fingers and perfect posture. She never looked up as she folded. Every square was done the same way: 3 vertical folds, then 2 across, pressed gently between forearms, and stacked in a precise offset so each corner lined up. It was like watching a master weaver, except she touched nothing but cloth. There's a saying whispered among the older attendants: "She who folds without sound controls the court." You didn't understand it at first, but now, standing here, you do. A sudden breeze slips in through the side lattice, carrying with it the faint scent of bread baking from the servants' kitchens. Your stomach stirs. You have not eaten. You will not eat until after the oiling. And that will not happen until every piece of fabric on your body has been verified. Because cleanliness begins not with soap, but with absence. No dirt, no noise, no wrinkle. The robe, for all its elegance, is really a disguise. It covers what cannot be spoken. It conceals the daily discomforts, the stiffness in your shoulders, the sleep in your eyes, the small indent where the sash pressed too tightly the day before. It's also armor. Outside these stone walls there are women who whisper about whose robe gleamed brighter, whose sash dipped too low, whose folds refused to stay centered. You never hear these whispers yourself, of course, but you feel them, in the way your steps are measured, in the way your fabric rustles or doesn't, in the way even your silence must be curated. Historians still debate whether these rituals served any functional purpose, or whether they were simply performances of control. But here, wrapped in this robe, you understand. It isn't about logic. It's about belonging. A young girl once dropped her sash while passing the garden colonnade. She bent to retrieve it. No one spoke to her for 3 days. Another had her robe returned from the laundry with a faint watermark, still visible along the hem. She was not seen again. No one speaks of her now. You tighten your sash just slightly, then let it settle back into place. There is a moment of stillness, only the soft hiss of fabric against stone, the shifting of your own breath. And then, like always, the quiet knock returns. 3 taps spaced like the beat of a song you can't forget. It's time to leave this chamber. Time to walk the 23 steps to the next room. Time to be unwrapped again and made clean in a way no robe can promise. The path to the bath is short, but it's the quietest corridor in the palace. No sandals are allowed here, no conversation. The limestone walls along this passage are thick, built not for grandeur, but for insulation. They keep out the desert heat, the hum of gossip, and the clatter of daily life beyond the courtyard gates. What little light filters in comes from small lattice windows, carved high above head height, casting thin ribbons of gold across the floor. You walk in silence. Your feet bare now land with careful pressure on the warm, worn stone. Each step is precise, not for show, but for necessity. You've learned how even a careless footfall can echo in places like this, can linger like a question no one wants to answer. At the end of the corridor, a thick stone doorway opens into a chamber colder than you expect. It is dim, windowless. The air smells faintly of wet clay, and something deeper moss maybe, or the ghost of rosewater evaporated centuries ago. The floor slopes gently downward, almost imperceptibly, but your feet sense it. There are no drains, no copper spouts, no bronze pipes. The water here does not need help finding its way out. It has been flowing for hundreds of years. The bath itself is carved entirely from a single block of white limestone, smoothed over time until the edges feel more like polished bone than stone. It is shallow, round, and without ornament. The rim is wide enough to sit on, though you don't not yet. A wooden step has been placed at its edge. You pause beside it, not for drama, but for protocol. A servant enters behind you carrying a small pitcher. She doesn't announce herself. She doesn't have to. The sound of warm water meeting stone is announcement enough. A second servant appears holding a length of soft linen that has been rolled and warmed. A third kneels inspecting the basin for leaves dust or insects, though she will never find any. This room is cleaned more thoroughly than most temples. You stand still. This is not a time to fidget. This is not a place for movement. Another girl, perhaps 15, perhaps younger, approaches with a low wooden stool. She places it inside the bath, positioning it off-center as tradition dictates. Sitting on the exact center would suggest arrogance or worse, an attempt to imitate the queen. The stool's legs are wrapped in cloth so they don't scrape against the stone. You step into the basin. The water is warm. Not hot, not cold, just enough to unsettle the skin into paying attention. It rises barely to your ankles. That is all it's meant to do. This is not immersion. This is initiation. No one speaks, not even you. The first pour comes from behind your left shoulder. You feel it before you hear it. A stream of water, perfectly timed, lands between your shoulder blades and trails down your spine. The linen cloth follows behind it, not to rub, but to catch. One pass, then it's gone. The second pour comes from the front over your chest, arms outstretched. The cloth moves down each forearm, wrapping gently around your wrists before retreating again. There is a rhythm to this that you are beginning to learn. Pour, catch, press, pause. You close your eyes. Some say the silence is comforting. You're not sure. It feels more like waiting, or like standing on a stage where everyone knows their role but you. Another servant approaches this one, holding a bowl of fine-grained sand mixed with powdered lotus root. It's not for scrubbing. Not quite. It's used more like a polish rubbed in circular motions, with the heel of the palm always following the shape of the muscle. Your calves, your thighs, your shoulders. Not a single bone or joint is left untouched. The sand is rinsed away with more warm water, and then the stool is turned. You do not move. The servant simply rotates it beneath you with both hands while you remain seated, legs drawn in slightly, arms across your chest. It's a small act of control, but one that must never be acknowledged. The women who attend you may be invisible in name, but they hold the shape of your day in their palms. Historians still argue whether these bathing rituals served hygiene symbolism or submission. Some call it spiritual purification, an echo of the Nile's sacred flood. Others see it as reinforcement of social hierarchy, where stillness equals virtue. You're not concerned with either. You just know that if you blink too quickly or breathe too loud, someone might notice, and that is never good. After the rinse, the linen cloth is brought again. This time it is used to wrap your shoulders, not to dry you, but to signal the end of cleansing. You rise only when the oldest servant gives the nod, not because she holds power, but because she carries memory. She's done this longer than anyone, long enough to remember the names of women no one speaks of anymore, long enough to fold regrets into towels and hand them off like secrets. You step out of the tub. Your feet touch the mat laid across the stone floor, reed fibers bound tightly with silk thread. It feels rough after the water. A smaller cloth is pressed into your hands. You hold it but do not use it. That too has a meaning. You are allowed to hold your own drying cloth, but not allowed to use it yourself. One of the maids kneels, dabbing at your legs, working upward in practiced lines. She avoids the joints, which are considered private, not in function but in energy. It is believed that too much pressure near the knees and elbows disturbs the body's balance. Another tidbit, whispered more than taught, tells of a concubine demoted for letting her footprints remain visible outside this very room. No one saw her leave the bath, but the prints still wet, curved left where she should have gone right. A deviation barely noticeable, except here everything is noticed. She was gone the next day. You've never forgotten that. The drying finishes at your shoulders. Your hair still tied is left damp. It will be dealt with later. For now, it must remain untouched, wrapped loosely in a cotton scarf until your oiling is complete. The final step in the bath chamber is the standing inspection. 3 women each, with a different cloth in hand, approach from different angles. One moves around your right side, checking the folds behind your knees. Another lifts the edge of your robe just slightly to inspect your heels. The third hovers at your left, silently assessing your posture, your breath, your stillness. They do not comment. They do not nod. They simply step back in unison, and that is your signal to proceed. You are clean now, but more importantly, you are quiet. You walk again out of the limestone room, down the gentle slope, back through the hush of stone corridors that carried you here. The cool air follows you like a veil rising over your skin, seeping into the folds of your robe. And for just a moment, you imagine what it might feel like to bathe in sunlight and laughter, in water that splashes freely without fear of protocol. But you do not linger on that thought, because waiting in the next room are the oils, and they do not pour themselves. The room where oil is applied is warmer than the bath chamber, but not by much. The air is drier here, carrying the faint aroma of beeswax and pressed herbs. You recognize it now, familiar anchoring. It's the smell of preparation, of transformation. It's the scent of being seen without actually being touched. The moment your foot crosses the threshold, the attendants adjust their positions with the fluidity of dancers who have performed this same sequence every day of their lives. No words pass between them. They don't need to. Each knows her task by the shifting of your robe, the rhythm of your breath, the way your damp fingers brush against the linen wrap still tied at your waist. You move toward the platform in the center of the room, a flat, polished block of sandstone, layered with reed mats covered in a cloth that has been heated under bricks since before sunrise. It's not large, just wide enough for you to kneel upon legs tucked beneath your arms, slightly lifted away from your sides like a statue in mid-offering. You don't sit back. You don't lean forward. Balance is part of the ritual. The oiling does not begin immediately. First, your body must be dried again, not because you are still wet, but because moisture means imperfection. The cloths used here are different, thicker, softer, lined with papyrus fiber, and stored in clay vessels to maintain their scent. One maid dabs beneath your chin, another along your back, a third behind each knee. They do not overlap, not even by mistake. Each has been trained to map the body in precise quadrants. Only when all three have stepped back in tandem does the oil attendant appear. She enters through a narrower door at the far end of the room, carrying a shallow dish made of pale ceramic. It reflects the light from the sconces above, like a pool of golden milk. The oil is warm, not hot and thicker than water, but thinner than syrup. She holds the dish in one hand and a small cloth pad in the other square, and folded twice, no larger than your palm. She kneels beside you, not to bow, but to steady her reach. Her fingers are gloved not in leather, but in finely woven linen, treated with powdered barley to prevent absorption. The gloves are tied at the wrists with thread dyed blue from crushed indigo blue, the color of sacred things. She dips the cloth into the oil. Then she presses it just once into the hollow beneath your collarbone. No rubbing, no dragging. Just a firm, deliberate touch held for 3 seconds, then lifted. A second dip. Another spot the inside of your left forearm. Then again behind your right shoulder. The pattern seems random, but it isn't. There's a logic to it rooted in ancient calendars, in healing charts etched into temple walls, in the whispers of women who've memorized the body like scripture. This is not decoration. This is instruction. The oil is a blend, each ingredient measured with obsessive care. Sesame for strength. Its scent is nutty grounding meant to draw you into the weight of your body. Moringa for softness. Subtle and green, it coats the skin like breath coats glass. And cedar sharp, dry aromatic, in a way that feels older than the room itself. It is the cedar that will linger the longest. Some believe that cedar oil can ward off illness. Others claim it was used to preserve the bodies of queens after death. But in life it serves another purpose entirely. It makes you memorable. Because no two women wear it the same way. And no two women smell alike. You've heard whispers of the scent books records kept secretly by royal stewards, listing which blend was assigned to which woman. A ledger of fragrance, if you will. Not just to prevent duplication, but to preserve identity in a place where names are too easily replaced. Menenit, your name, newer than your scent, still fragile. The oil is now being applied to your legs one at a time from the ankle upward. The strokes are short, overlapping as if layering silk over skin. Each dip of the cloth is counted. Each application is timed to the length of a single breath. You inhale, the cloth touches you. You exhale, it's lifted away. When it reaches your hands, there's a pause. The attendant turns the cloth inside out, revealing its clean quadrant, and presses it to the web of skin between your thumb and index finger. That space, they say, carries tension. Too much pressure, and your voice tightens. Too little, and you tremble during ceremonies. She gets it just right. You close your eyes for a moment, not because you're tired, but because it's safer. When you open them again, another servant has entered, carrying a new dish. This one smaller, filled with thicker oil, almost resinous. It is touched only to your temples and behind your ears. Those places must be oiled twice a day, morning and dusk. Historians have long debated whether these precise routines were religious cosmetic or political. Perhaps they were all three. In a court where words are counted and gestures weighed, scent becomes language. A well-oiled wrist says you belong. A poorly scented one says you've been forgotten. You lift your arms slightly as the sash is loosened. The cloth from earlier is replaced with a fresh one, its fibers infused with crushed tamarind seed. Not for smell this time, but to seal the oil into your skin. Tamarind, it turns out, acts as a natural emulsifier, an ancient trick for making oils last through long days in hot rooms. Your body feels heavier now, not with weight, but with awareness. The oil does not drip. It clings, it hums. It reminds you of where you are, where you've been touched, where you've been seen. You feel less like a girl and more like a vessel, anointed, not adorned. The servant steps back. A final cloth is offered, not to dry, but to wrap. It is draped over your shoulders, forming a loose cape that keeps the warmth close. The scent rises slowly, mingling with the cedar smoke from the brazier tucked into the wall. You feel yourself disappearing into it. And then the door opens again. A maid enters carrying the scent confirmation roll, a strip of woven reed passed beneath your arms, around your waist, behind your knees. It doesn't touch your skin. It's only meant to pass through the space where your scent lingers. She sniffs once subtly and nods. You're ready. Another girl places the final touch, a drop of rose water on the bridge of your nose, like punctuation at the end of a quiet sentence. You rise, not quickly, not slowly, just enough to carry the weight of what's been done. And then, robe restored, sash retied, you walk through the archway into the next chamber, where the waxing begins. And you will not flinch. Not this time. Because now you carry cedar behind your ears, moringa beneath your knees, and the weight of sesame on your spine. You are becoming the woman they expect you to be. The waxing room smells like honey and heat. Not the sweet wild honey sold in jars in the market stalls of Thebes, but something more medicinal, sharp at the edges, thick with resin. You recognize it now, the scent of beeswax warmed slowly over brick. Stirred with herbal pastes ground earlier that morning, the mixture simmers in a shallow bronze dish. Perched on a low stone stand, the heat beneath it, fueled by ember, not flame. There must never be smoke, only warmth. You step inside without hesitation. The oil still clings to your skin, forming a thin, protective sheen. It isn't meant to stay. In moments, most of it will be drawn away, lifted by cloth, pulled with wax peeled like layers of silence. What remains will not be what was applied, but what was endured. This, too, is part of the daily order. You settle onto the platform in the center of the room. It is slightly raised, covered in quilted linen, and just firm enough to allow pressure without bruising. You lay your forearms across a padded roll, your palms face downward, relaxed. There is a softness in your posture now learned over time. Stillness here is not submission. It's strength disguised. The waxing servant enters. She is older than the others. Her gloves are made of tightly woven silk, dyed in the faintest shade of green, barely visible, unless you're looking for it. But you are. Every detail here matters. She carries no tray. Only a wide bowl nestled in her arms, lined with thick cloth and covered with a lid of pressed fig wood. The warmth of the contents fogs the air just slightly as she approaches. She nods once, not at you, but at the girl standing behind her, who steps forward carrying a small bundle of cloths already dampened and kept under a linen wrap to preserve their heat. These are the towels that will open your pores. She presses one along your forearm. Not hard, never hard. Just enough to coax the skin into softening. A breath of steam rises as the towel makes contact. She moves to the next area, working slowly, respectfully. By the time she reaches your upper arms, your skin tingles with anticipation. Then the wax comes. It's thicker than you remember. A blend of beeswax and plant resin, tinted with ground chamomile, and a trace of lavender for scent. It has cooled slightly since it left the warmer, just enough to thicken without losing pliability. The first strip is applied with a thin wooden blade, flat broad and smoothed with use. The wax doesn't burn. It rests. She waits. And then, swift practiced, she presses a linen strip across the wax and pulls. One stroke. Clean. The cloth is folded immediately to trap the wax refolded to reveal a fresh edge. She never uses the same part twice. Never hurries. Each strip is a movement, a measure. 1 square inch at a time. The sensation stings, but you do not flinch. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because you have learned to breathe past it. This process is not just grooming. It's erasure. Hair is seen as wildness, as distraction, as something that might trap odor or shadow, or even thought. To remain smooth is to remain in control of image, of scent, of presence. Hair is for the peasant girl chasing goats through dust. You are not her anymore. Historians still argue whether the strict removal of body hair among royal women was purely about aesthetics, or also symbolic of ritual purity, especially before offerings or ceremonies. What is known, however, is that many women in court submitted to this process more than once a day, especially during the weeks when the pharaoh held public audiences. Every surface of your skin had to declare readiness. She moves on to your wrists, your inner elbows. These are the most delicate places where skin folds, where warmth hides, where scent gathers. The wax is applied more sparingly here, the cloth thinner. She switches gloves linen, now not silk, to increase sensitivity. Her fingertips guide the strip without pulling. She peels slowly, and you realize that this too is a kind of communication, the act of tending to another's vulnerability without harm. Or perhaps that's romanticizing it. Either way, it's happening to you. Your legs come next. You lie back on the platform feet, resting on a small block to elevate the angle. A second attendant appears, offering a bowl of cool water mixed with crushed mint and barley powder. She dabs your ankles and calves gently, just enough to prepare the skin. The waxing continues. By now, your robe has been folded away, your modesty preserved only by draped linen panels, suspended from brass rods above the platform. The cloth doesn't shield you from the servants, only from the knowledge of being seen. And somehow that's enough. There is a moment of stillness. The wax has been used, the strips discarded. A new basin is brought in this one, filled with a blend of moringa oil and a few drops of fig sap. It's cooler than your skin, meant to soothe but also to seal. The oil is painted on with wide brushes made from bundled palm fibers. They do not tickle. They glide. You exhale. The scent is familiar now. Earthy. Sharp. Yours. There was a time when you believed all the women smelled the same. But now you know better. Every blend is recorded. Assigned. No two women are given the same mix. If they are, someone has made a grave mistake. In a place like this, your identity is not preserved through voice or opinion, but through scent, through touch, through the way your skin responds to fig or cedar, to mint or myrrh. A new girl enters with a small pouch of cloth, something almost ceremonial. Inside it, wrapped in a spiral, is a bronze razor, flat wide and polished to a near mirror finish. It is not used often, only for areas the wax cannot reach. It has a slight curve, and its edge is dulled deliberately, sharp enough to lift the fine hairs from your nape, but not enough to break skin. She does not speak as she uses it. Her motions are circular, gentle, efficient. When finished, the razor is cleaned with a cloth soaked in vinegar and mint, then wrapped again and placed back into its silk pouch, along with a sachet of dried peppermint leaves to discourage tarnish. You once overheard a servant say that bronze remembers blood. Whether that's true or not, no one dares leave it exposed. You are helped back into your robe now. A fresh sash replaces the one removed earlier. The air feels cooler against your skin. Not just because it is clean, but because it is new again, free of yesterday's tension, today's effort. You glance toward the side table where the used wax strips have been folded and stacked. They will be burned before midday. Nothing of you will remain, except perhaps the memory in your skin, the slight ache where the wax pulled hardest, the smoothness where hair once grew the scent of moringa that clings to your elbows even as you lift your arms to stretch. The platform is cleaned behind you, the cloths replaced, the basin taken away, everything reset for the next woman. You walk toward the next chamber steps careful. The hair is next. Not yours, of course, but the hair you must wear, and it too demands reverence. Your skin still tingles from the waxing, each pore quiet, each limb weightless beneath the robe. It would feel like freedom if not for what comes next. Because the truth is you haven't yet been seen. Not really. Until your head is crowned, until your hair know the hair is set in place, you are unfinished. And though your body now glows with cedar and sesame, it is your silhouette that must carry weight in the hallway. That begins with what sits atop your skull. You walk carefully into the next chamber. This one is dimmer than the last, intentionally so. Light is the enemy of illusion, and hair in this palace is illusion perfected. You've never worn your own in public. In fact, you barely remember what it looks like anymore. It's braided now, tucked and flattened beneath a tight linen cap, secured with loops of thread. Even the closest servant has never seen it fully loose. Real hair is unpredictable. It frizzes. It lifts in humidity. It remembers sleep. But wigs. Wigs can be oiled, bound, scented, and trained. They do not change unless someone changes them. That is their beauty and your burden. The wig assigned to you this season is kept in a carved wooden box, lined with soft flax and fragments of dried citrus rind. The lid is not locked, but it might as well be. Only one person is allowed to open it, your brushing servant. She enters now, not hurriedly, not slowly. Her pace is tuned to the rhythm of the room. You do not greet her. You lower your gaze as she passes, part tradition, part genuine respect. She sets the box on a low table near the brazier. Steam curls faintly from a nearby vessel, castor oil warmed just enough to loosen the strands. She lifts the lid, and there it is, black threaded with brown, gleaming like polished ebony under the flickering lamp. The strands are a mixture human hair from distant cities, twisted with fine linen thread dyed to match. It is thick but not heavy, styled into narrow plaits that spiral toward the nape, then tucked beneath at the ends. The design is yours alone, or rather yours for now. Each wig has a name. This one is called Kset, which means shade or shadow. You didn't choose it. The brushing servant did. She said it suited your eyes. That's the closest thing to a compliment you've heard since arriving. She removes the wig from its cradle, holding it with both hands. Not like a tool, but like a creature. She does not speak as she begins to work. Her brush is carved from tamarisk wood, its bristles made of stiffened papyrus stems. It does not pull. It sings. Stroke by stroke, she smooths the hair, checking for fray, for warp, for imbalance. She separates each plait with her gloved fingers, inspecting them like she might inspect fine linen for imperfections. If even one strand is out of place, the wig will be returned to storage for 3 days. A rule passed down through silent generations. No wig is worn more than 6 days in a row. It must rest, just like the women who wear them rarely do. Historians often marvel at the precision of ancient Egyptian wigs, how intricately they were constructed, how closely they mirrored royal identity. Some were adorned with beads or golden threads, but yours is simpler, more appropriate for someone new. Its elegance lies in symmetry, in silence. She sets down the brush. You lower your head. With the grace of ritual, she lifts the wig and sets it gently atop your scalp. There is a moment, a heartbeat, when nothing happens. Then, with one slow breath, she presses her palms to either side, adjusting the angle. You feel the weight settle. It is cool at first, then warm, familiar, present. She circles behind you, fingers ghosting along the edges, tucking here, tightening there. A bone pin is inserted near your left temple, not to secure, but to anchor. A second pin mirrors it on the right. When she finishes, she steps back, not in ceremony, but in observation. She watches the way your posture responds, how your neck stretches, how your spine rises. It is not vanity. It is completion. Your brushing servant is the only one allowed to correct the wig once it's on. If she is ill or absent or forbidden for any reason, the wig stays in its box. You do not appear. You do not attend. You do not speak. Without hair, you are invisible. There is a logic to it. Scent follows. She picks up a small clay pot from the shelf and opens it with a twist of her wrist. Inside is a thick mixture of resin and cinnamon, softened with oil. She dips a slender reed into the paste and draws it lightly along the underside of the wig behind the ears beneath the curve at the back. Just enough to leave a trace. Not enough to shine. This scent is your signature. Each woman in the court has her own blend, assigned based on season mood favor. Some are bold bitter orange and myrrh. Others floral rose petal and lily root. Yours is grounding, warm. It lingers in spaces long after you've left them, but never overwhelms. Scent here is presence. There are stories, quiet ones, of a queen who demanded her wig be rescented 3 times a day, terrified that others would not know she had entered a room. Another preferred her hair remain unscented entirely, insisting her voice be enough. She was rarely seen. Your brushing servant replaces the pot, then bows briefly but fully. You are ready. She leaves without looking back, and you remain alone for a moment. Just you and the scent of cinnamon and the quiet weight of kesset settling into your crown. You rise. The air moves differently now around your shoulders. You are taller, not because of posture, but because of perception. Women with proper wigs are listened to more carefully. They are believed more quickly. Their presence is harder to dismiss. You pass a mirror. Not deliberately, but it catches you anyway. And there she is. Not the girl who arrived here 6 weeks ago, clutching her satchel and trying not to show the trembling in her hands. Not even the girl who stood bare in the bathing room this morning, shivering slightly at the first touch of the oilcloth. No, this woman stands taller. She does not blink. She smells of cedar and cinnamon, and knows better than to adjust the hem of her robe without permission. This woman wears hair that does not belong to her, but somehow it fits. You turn away from the mirror. The next chamber waits, and it will take you deeper into the rituals no one talks about. The ones that happen behind curtains with ingredients crushed by hand and cloths warmed in silence. Because not all cleanliness is visible, and not all purity is meant for others to see. There is a part of the palace that even silence cannot follow, a place where the air shifts, where torches are dimmed, and where the rituals deepen into something more private, more intimate. You are led there now, not through the wide, gleaming halls of polished stone, but through a narrower corridor carved simply quietly without grandeur. This is not a space built for display. It was carved for discretion. You've never come here alone, and you never will. One attendant walks ahead of you, lantern in hand. Her steps are slow, deliberate, her shoulders squared. Another walks behind you, carrying the basin wrapped in linen and filled with items prepared before dawn bowls of dried petals. small jugs of solution lengths of folded cotton. Nothing in her hands is ceremonial, but none of it is ordinary. Everything has purpose, and all of it is memory. The chamber door opens with no sound. There are no guards, no titles, no names here. Only breath water and cloth. The floor is smooth limestone, slightly sloped toward a carved groove that runs along the base of the far wall. A woven mat rests in the center, its fibers padded for comfort, but not luxury. You do not sit yet. One of the women removes your sash with a practiced twist. Another unfastens the pins at the hem of your robe. The fabric is not peeled away, it is let down gently, as if it had weight beyond its linen threads. You are not naked. You are being prepared. The body is not shamed here, but it is never assumed. Even in this chamber, your modesty is preserved by partitions of gauze and shadow. You step behind a curtain drawn across half the room. On the other side, the attendants wait with the tools of their task. They do not call your name. They do not ask if you are ready. They simply begin. Warm water is poured into a clay basin, one not used for any other purpose. Inside the water, finely ground hibiscus petals swirl with pale flecks of crushed mint and a pinkish trace of powdered salt. Not just any salt. This salt comes from the edges of the Nile gathered during the low season, when the silt is most pure, sun-dried for 3 days and crushed between smooth stones. One woman kneels at your side. She holds a cloth no larger than a handspan soaked in the blend. Her gloves are new changed specifically for this task. She presses the cloth gently between your thighs. Not scrubbing, not rubbing, just holding. Then comes the second cloth. This one is cooler, dipped in a mix containing rose leaf and barley water. It's applied in slow sweeps, always moving outward, never inward. Her hands never shake. Yours don't either anymore. You remember the first time. How your legs trembled. How you flinched when the water touched you. Not from pain. From the unfamiliarity of being cleaned where no one had ever touched you with such care or precision. You've learned now to breathe through the steps, to trust the rhythm. The third woman prepares the paste. It's made of crushed red beans, powdered rice husk, and a touch of aloe. You weren't told its purpose at first. Only later did you learn whispers in the betting hall that some believed it could help a concubine avoid being summoned. That its earthy smell masked the body-turned favor elsewhere. You've never asked if it's true, but you've noticed who asks for it, and who does not. She applies the paste carefully in thin lines from the base of your belly to the inner folds of your thighs. It is left for 2 minutes, then removed with a cloth dampened in mint water. The sensation is cooling, not shocking, soothing in a way that makes you want to close your eyes. But you don't. You stay still as the attendant reaches for the final rinse, a pitcher of floral water, mixed with fennel and a trace of clove. She pours it slowly, letting it stream along your hips and down toward the mat. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is hurried. Historians often overlook these rituals, tucked away in the margins of scrolls, and overlooked by the boldface of dynasty and conquest. But the evidence is there in the private journals of midwives, in the chemical traces, found in cosmetic bowls in the oral traditions, passed between wet nurses and washerwomen. The mixtures used here had purpose beyond cleanliness. They were medicine, protection, language. Your body is dried again gently with a square of cotton that is burned after use. Another cloth is tucked around your waist. You rise from the mat not with haste, but with familiarity. This is no longer something done to you. It is something you have become part of. The robe is returned fresh with new folds, not the one worn earlier. That one has been taken away. You don't ask where. It's not your concern anymore. A small sachet is slipped into your sash. Inside it, a few crushed fennel seeds, a dried rose petal, and a piece of twisted flax cord. The scent it gives off is faint, almost undetectable. But when you shift your weight, when your robe catches the air, you'll smell it. You leave the chamber in silence. There is no escort this time. You know the way back. You walk slowly, not out of weakness, but reverence. You pass no one. The corridor remains empty, as it always is after these sessions. And yet, even alone, you know you are not unobserved. There are no mirrors here, but the reflection lingers. Not of your face, of your discipline, of your willingness to be unspoken and yet exact. You return to your quarters, and the sash is adjusted by a waiting girl. The pin at your temple is checked. The curtain is drawn. And for a moment you sit. Just sit. The weight of everything salt oil hair name settles into your spine like gravity. You do not cry. You do not sigh. You simply exist, fragrant, quiet, impossibly clean. And tomorrow it will happen again. Because nothing is more watched than a woman who is unseen. The ritual ends not with a ceremony, but with silence and powder. Your body scrubbed and oiled and depilated is now still, but it isn't finished. One of the quiet maids returns, not the one who handles wigs or towels or bath water. This one carries a shallow dish the color of bone ash, filled with fine scented powder, so light it shifts with breath. She dips a soft brush in without speaking, then presses the bristles to the hollow behind your ears, the crease inside each elbow and the backs of your knees. Not perfume, not musk, just a faint note barely there. The scent is dry, nearly invisible, barely sweet. It's not supposed to announce you. It's meant to neutralize, to ensure you don't interfere. Because in the royal palace, the most important scent isn't yours. It's the temple incense that rises like silk from the sanctuaries. If your fragrance is too strong, it's not elegant. It's blasphemy. That's why every grain of this powder is sifted twice, stored in alabaster, and blessed with mint-crushed acacia or myrrh. Your presence must be felt, not smelled. Like wind on linen, like breath over stone. No one ever says this aloud, of course, but everyone knows. When a nobleman's sandal tie sneezes while bending to greet you, it isn't just dust. It's judgment. Maybe your scent was too bold, maybe not neutral enough. And you'll hear about it the next morning, indirectly, of course, through a servant's sudden silence or a missing seat at temple service. Here, a sneeze can be a sentence. The powder doesn't just cover your body, it protects your position. And sometimes it fails. You've learned to carry that powder's weight like a second skin. It coats your wrists, the backs of your knees, even between your toes, all so the air around you remains acceptable, not delightful, not alluring, just correct. Like everything else you've endured this morning, this final step is invisible by design. No one claps for the absence of scent, but they notice its failure like a cracked vase in a silent hall. And so one last brush along the collarbone, one final check for lint, for sheen, for imbalance. You stand still while they recheck the robe, straighten the wig, adjust the anklets so their jingle sounds accidental. There's no mirror here. Only the slow, weightless nod from the eldest servant in the room, the one who once dressed your mother, and perhaps her mother before her. She doesn't say a word, but you know what it means. Outside this chamber, the sun has finally risen. You can hear distant footsteps on polished stone and the faint clink of bronze trays. It's almost time to appear, and the air shifts around you like a curtain drawn tight. You don't smell like flowers. You smell like restraint, like protocol, like centuries. And if you've done it right, if your powder was placed with care and your silence held steady, you'll pass through the next set of doors with no more notice than a breeze. That's the goal. Because in this world, no royal woman draws attention to herself by scent. She lets the room adapt to her, not the other way around. You are presence, not perfume. Command, not conversation. And yet even now you can't help but wonder, will they smell the rose ash behind your left ear? Will someone somewhere know it was you? That question lingers as you move almost ghost-like down the final corridor. It's only once long ago you heard the story of a concubine, demoted not for what she said or wore, but because a sandal binder sneezed in her presence. They said the smell clung too closely. It interrupted the incense. It made the court priest raise an eyebrow. And that was enough. Ever since the powder's been finer, the maids quieter, and no one has worn that scent again. It's been stricken from the records like a name carved out of a tomb. And so even now you breathe shallowly. You step lightly. You carry the burden of no scent at all. There is a saying whispered among the attendants. No stain goes unseen. Not on silk, not on skin, and certainly not on the pale linen, folded at the end of your bath. One mark, one shadow of sweat left behind on a garment or cushion, and rumors travel faster than chariots. In the palace, hygiene is not just about being clean. It is your armor, your status, sometimes even your survival. They check the towels, always. After you rise from the limestone basin, and the final dusting of powder has settled, a second servant gathers. Each cloth holds it to the light and folds it with practiced precision. If one edge is darker, if moisture lingered too long beneath your arm or across your back, then whispers follow. Not from the lips of the maids, of course, but you'll feel it. A tray arriving late, a glance that avoids your eyes, your name mysteriously missing from the next temple procession. The truth is, in a world where dozens of women share a palace, and only one may rise, even the tiniest bodily trace becomes a weapon. A damp mark on a ceremonial cushion was enough once to have a favored concubine dismissed from a pharaoh's retinue, not because she was disliked, but because the stain had been seen and worse remembered. Cleanliness was not just virtue, it was presence. It meant you controlled your body to the point of vanishing. And yet the linens are identical, pale, soft, folded in threes along the long edge and twice along the short. Each is marked only with a color-coded thread, green for arms, white for legs, yellow for face. Get it wrong and you risk insulting the woman you serve, or worse, getting dismissed yourself. One handmaid, they say, was sent home in silence for confusing a footcloth with a facecloth. She never served again. You've learned how to manage, which side to lean on, how long to wait before standing, when to change layers so sweat never touches the outer robe. These are not talents praised in song or story, but they're what keep you where you are. Because beauty may catch a pharaoh's eye, but hygiene, invisibility, perfection, those keep you safe. At least for now. There is no room for error. The sandalwood stools you sit on are wiped clean before and after you rise. Even the woven mat beneath your feet is brushed daily, just in case someone kneels and notices something you didn't. Everything you touch must remain untouched. It's a paradox you've grown used to. You are present, yet must leave no trace. You are watched, yet can never slip. Still, every now and then you remember a girl, just a little older than you. Her name, forgotten now, was once mentioned in every corridor. She laughed too loudly. She leaned back when she sat, and once her robe wrinkled. And another time a stain. A brown mark, they said, at the hem of her linen wrap. Perhaps tea, perhaps more. No one dared ask. She vanished 3 days later. No farewell, just a room swept bare as if she'd never arrived. And so you learn to fear your own reflection. Not for vanity, but for precision. You blot your skin with muslin. You sniff the towel twice. You fold it over before handing it back. These are the rituals no one teaches aloud. They are passed through silence, through the quiet terror of being noticed for the wrong thing. By now you've become nearly invisible in your perfection. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that avoids correction. You move through the morning routines like clockwork scrub oil sent dry. Check the robe for creases. Check the linens for marks. Hold your arms slightly raised to avoid skin meeting fabric for too long. In the end, what matters isn't what they see, it's what they never see. And so, as the final cloth is folded and your place in the procession secured, You allow yourself one slow exhale. You've made it through the day's hygiene trials again. The towel bears no trace. The room smells faintly of mint and myrrh. Your place is safe for now. But something deeper lingers beneath all this. A quiet ache, perhaps. You once believed these rituals made you clean. Now you wonder if they simply make you disappear. Still, as the sun angles higher and sandalwood smoke curls above the courtyard, you smooth your robe one last time and turn toward the hall. You've done everything right. No one will speak of your towel today. And just like that, the doors open and the story shifts. Because while Menenit's day of ritual is done, the world beyond Egypt is just beginning to stir. Let's step beyond the desert winds and sandstone walls to other dynasties. Other women, other rules. The names may change, but the weight of expectation remains. And it begins now. You don't walk alone here. Not anymore. Not since the day your name was inked onto the peach-colored scroll declared eligible by the Ministry of Internal Affairs and summoned to the inner court. Not since you passed through the vermilion gates of the Forbidden City, where the walls rise higher than memory and the air hangs with the weight of incense and consequence. You are now one of many, not a name but a rank, a petal added to the Emperor's bouquet. And every night before you sleep, whether in solitude or summoned by golden decree, your body must be steamed. It begins with silence, as all things in the inner palace do. The stone corridor to the bath chamber is swept thrice before your feet touch it. The women who bow as you pass do not meet your gaze. They are not allowed to. Their eyes lower not from modesty, but from a rule no servant may look directly at a consort in preparation. You enter the room barefoot. It is dim, always dim, lit by slivers of candlelight hidden behind silk screens. The walls are bare, painted in pale lacquer. The bath itself is no bath at all, not in the way you once imagined with water and splashing, and the lightness of floating. Here the basin is made of dark clay, a squat, rounded vessel set into the floor rimmed in brass. And it is not for soaking, it is for steaming. They call it Zhengshen body steaming. You kneel first, onto folded cloth soft but heavy. Your robe is unfastened and set aside. You sit on a lattice of bamboo strips suspended above the basin. Beneath you, the vessel steams gently. Inside, magnolia blossoms, sliced ginger root, cracked peppercorns, and dried slices of green mandarin. All of it boiled in water from the well behind the imperial kitchens, carried here by hand. No pipes, no rush. The scent rises slowly, not like perfume sharp and attention-seeking, but like memory, like something half-remembered from your mother's sleeve, or the silken pouch tucked in your bedroll on the journey to Beijing. It is comforting, almost, but you do not lean in. That would crease the spine. You must sit upright, chin level, eyes half-lowered, not closed, never closed. If the Emperor were to summon you tonight, the steam cannot leave your face bloated or flushed. You must emerge glistening but not red, pliable, not wilted. The heat builds. It does not burn, not quite, but it tests you. You feel it rise through the soles of your feet, curl behind your knees, warm the insides of your thighs, and the hollow where your back curves in. Beads of moisture gather behind your ears. Your hair is pinned up high, wrapped in gauze to keep it from absorbing the scent too early. The fragrance must cling to your skin, not your strands. No one speaks. A woman in gray approaches only to adjust the slatted seat beneath you, her fingers wrapped in linen, her mouth covered with a cotton veil. They say it's for hygiene, but everyone knows the truth. No servant is allowed to breathe into the steam of a concubine. Their scent must not interfere. Their breath must not mingle. The room is still, a soft hiss from the pot below. Nothing else. You do not know how long it lasts. Time isn't measured here in minutes, but in sensations. When the skin beneath your arms begins to glisten just so, when your calves loosen and your breath deepens, that's when they'll know. That's when it ends. A gentle tap on the brass rim signals the close. You stand slowly, careful not to drip. A towel awaits, not coarse, not woven, but silk-fibered and thin as gossamer. You dab, never rub. The skin must remain untouched by abrasion. Only air and scent. Next comes the robe. It is not your usual day robe embroidered with butterflies or crane wings. This one is plain. Pale rose silk, unadorned, stitched with only the tiniest border of gold thread, visible only when the light hits just right. It has not been worn by any other woman. In fact, it was made specifically for tonight's steam. One wear only. After this, it will be discarded or unraveled. You slide into it as if into another skin. Still, the ritual is not over. A second pot is prepared smaller, shallower. This one rests on a brazier, and inside shredded agar wood, dried clove-powdered musk, and a single curl of aged sandalwood bark. A slotted wooden dome is placed atop it, and you hold your wrists above the smoke, just briefly, enough to let it kiss the skin. This is not for the emperor. It is for the corridor, for the scent that will follow you, the way a servant will inhale as you pass and know without looking who just walked by. Scent is status, and your scent must say clean, untouched, rare. Only then are you permitted to return to your chamber, or perhaps not. A bell might ring, a scroll might be unrolled, your name might be called, and if tonight is the night, then the final stage begins. A set of gloves, not for you, but for the eunuchs who will escort you. They wear them not to touch, but to remind themselves they must not. The gloves are white, embroidered with tiny lotus blooms. You are guided through the west corridor, past bronze lanterns shaped like peaches, past guards who do not raise their heads. At the final turn, the path splits. One leads to the emperor's quarters. The other leads home. You never know which you'll take until the very last moment. Sometimes it doesn't matter, because the ritual has already been performed. The steam has already seeped into your bones. The scent clings to your palms and lingers beneath your jaw. And in this palace to be prepared is already to be watched. To be watched is already to be weighed. And if not tonight, then perhaps tomorrow. But here is the quiet truth you've learned. The ritual is not for him. It is for them, the watchers, the whisperers, the ones who note how you walked, how your skin looked, how your scent lingered or didn't. For in the Forbidden City, a woman who fails to steam properly is not simply unclean. She is forgettable, and there is no fate more feared than that. A favored tale circulates behind closed fans, once a concubine prepared as usual. She steamed, she powdered, she perfumed her pulse points, but she skipped the final breath of agarwood, and the emperor walked right past her nose wrinkled. She was dismissed within the month. No warning, no reason. Only the unspoken law fragrance is memory. If you are not fragrant, you will not be remembered. And so you continue. Night after night, whether summoned or not, you kneel above the steaming basin and let the scent become your second skin. It hurts sometimes, the stillness, the not knowing. But in that narrow room of heat and silence, you feel oddly safe, because the steam is something you can control, unlike the emperor, or the court, or tomorrow. As you step back into your chamber robe, clinging lightly to damp skin, a thought flickers strange, soft, almost disloyal. What would it be like to bathe just for yourself? To splash water? To hum? To scent your body with oils you chose not because they were ranked on a scroll, but because they reminded you of home. But there is no home beyond these walls now. Only steam and memory, and the fragrance that says you still matter here. As you settle onto your cool linen bed, the fragrance wrapping itself around you like a final sigh, a breeze stirs the curtains. Somewhere far off a bell rings, and in that sound a story shifts. Because beyond the red gates of Beijing, other palaces rise, other rituals unfold, and next we'll step into one. A place where scent is sacred, but meaning lies in silence. Let's follow the whisper to Heian, Japan. The scent here is quieter, not softer, quieter, as if it were trained to bow just like everything else in the room. You're no longer in the palace halls of Beijing, or the jasmine-steamed corridors of the Forbidden City. This is Kyoto, late Edo period, where silence is not empty, it is disciplined. And here your fragrance is not meant to be remembered. It's meant to disappear. You are the wife of a chunin, a mid-ranking samurai, not elite enough for golden sleeves, but respected enough that neighbors bow as you pass. Your home sits just outside the imperial district, not lavish. Tatami floors, wooden lattice doors, a gravel path brushed clean each morning. The crows come to drink at the well behind your garden. The peach tree in the corner drops its fruit before you can harvest them. Still you sweep the path, prune the branches, and keep the teacups facing the same direction on the shelf. Because order is everything, so is scent. And today, like every other day, you must prepare for the tea ceremony. Your husband will return at the hour of the monkey, and if he chooses to host guests, you must kneel beside him. Pour the water, fold the cloth, and be present, but invisible. That starts with your scent, not perfume, not flowers, certainly not anything foreign. You step into the back room where a shallow clay brazier is already lit. It smokes gently sandalwood chips shaved by hand and arranged with deliberate care on a grid of silver wire. The smoke rises in slow ribbons barely visible against the pale light. You kneel, not on your heels, but upright Caesar position as is proper. In your lap is a bamboo fan. You open it once, then twice, then stop. A rhythm. Inhale on the first, exhale on the second, then stillness. The smoke must not touch your skin directly. That would be too forward. Instead, your hair wrapped in silk for protection is gently lowered over the path of the smoke strand by strand. You hold it with one hand. Let the fragrance rise through it. Let it sit there, settle, not cling, not coat, just reside. They call it kodo, the way of fragrance. But it is not about being fragrant. It is about not offending. Later, when your husband enters the room, he must be able to sit beside you and not notice you. He must sense only peace, stillness, discipline. If he smells plum blossom, he might ask why. If he smells nothing, he'll assume you've done it right. There is a quiet art to becoming unnoticeable, and you have learned it. The ritual continues. After the hair is done, you turn your attention to your sleeves. They too must be cleansed. The cotton lining absorbs scent during cooking rice vinegar. Miso smoke from the brazier and must be aired. You place them near the incense lift the edge of the fabric and let it flutter gently in the perfumed current. Not too long. If you linger, the scent becomes suspicious, as though you are trying to mask something. And in Edo society, that is dangerous, because too much fragrance is not seen as indulgent. It is seen as deceit. They say a woman who changes her scent too often has something to hide. A secret meeting, a message passed, a rendezvous. Even the brothels down in Gion regulate their fragrance rotation to avoid such rumors. Your neighbor once changed her incense 3 times in a week. By the 4th, the rice merchant asked her husband if everything was all right at home. The husband's sword hung on the wall for a week after that. You remember, so you don't experiment. Your incense comes from the same shop your mother used, a small store tucked behind a paper lantern maker's stall. The old woman there keeps a ledger not of names but of scents. She recognizes you not by face but by your family's fragrance profile. She once told you your mother preferred aloes wood. You lean more towards sandal. You didn't correct her. You bowed. And now here you are performing the same ritual in the same way. By the time your sleeves are done, your knees ache. You rise slowly, folding the cloth, dousing the embers. You open the shoji screen and let the scent waft naturally through the room. Never force fragrance into a room. Let it arrive like a guest welcomed, not summoned. The tea set is already arranged. 3 cups, a whisk, a lidded bowl, and a small towel folded once lengthwise, then twice across. You check the water temperature, kneeling again, this time on a fresh mat. Your husband will not say anything when he enters. That is the goal. He will sit, and if he notices nothing, you've succeeded. Still, there is a moment, always a moment, when you wonder what would it feel like to be seen. Not scandalously, just noticed. To let your hair carry cherry blossom even if it's out of season. To wear a scent not recorded in the ledger. To breathe something bold and not feel like an error for doing so. But boldness is not for this house, not for you. You are the wife of a samurai, and your scent must speak of harmony. That too is a form of survival. As dusk falls and the first cicadas begin their evening song, the incense has cooled. You rise to greet your husband with quiet steps. His nod is your reward. He does not sniff. He does not tilt his head. He simply sits, places one palm on the tatami, and gestures for tea. You bow, begin the ritual. And though the silence between you is vast, the scent between you is understood. Not too sweet, not too absent, just right. Later, as you roll up the mats and wipe the rim of the teacup with a soft cloth, a thought brushes across your mind like the passing of wind through paper doors. What a strange thing to live in a world where even your smell must kneel. But no one hears the thought. Only the faintest trace of sandalwood remains in your sleeves. And the world continues scented, but silent. Not far beyond the walls of Kyoto, however, there were places where fragrance took another form. Not one of discipline, but of secrecy. For in Persia's inner quarters, scent was not meant to vanish. It was meant to be remembered. The scent of sandalwood fades behind you, replaced by something richer, heavier. A waft of warmed amber and animal fat drifting through painted marble corridors, where polished sandals clack in rhythm with gossip. You are no longer in Kyoto. You are in Rome, the capital of the ancient world, where bathing is not just a habit, it is a declaration of wealth, of control, of civilization itself. To stink in Rome is to be suspect. To smell like rose's musk, or crushed myrtle, that is to be seen. You are the wife of a Roman senator, and your morning begins not in your domus, but in the bathhouse. Not the loud, steamy public ones where plebeians jostle and joke and scrape their backs with olive oil and strigils. No, you belong to a different category. You step into the balnea privata, the private women's bath, attached to an aristocratic estate near the Esquiline Hill, built not just for hygiene, but for strategy. Everything you do here, how long you stay in the caldarium, whether you exfoliate before or after the oiling, how many drops of perfume you apply before the lunch banquet will be whispered about. And weaponized. The first room is warm. A servant, mute on purpose, greets you with a slight bow and hands you a cloth bowl soaked in rose water. You do not greet her. That would imply familiarity. Instead, you nod once and walk through the curved corridor lined with mosaic tiles. Sea nymphs, dolphins, a Minerva with gold leaf still intact around her eyes. Everything glows faintly. You disrobe in silence, placing your tunic and stola into the arms of a second slave. She carries them away to be brushed and folded. Every crease matters. You're left in sandals and an embroidered girdle. Nothing else. It's time. You step into the tepidarium, the warm room. Steam curls through the air, not heavy, but precise. Controlled. The bath is shallow cut from polished stone inlaid with copper rings where towels and tools hang. You are not alone. There are others here, wives, daughters, cousins of senators and tribunes, all talking softly, Not loudly, never laughter, but just enough conversation to float above the steam. Someone remarks on the latest perfume from Alexandria. Another quietly suggests that the wife of Gaius should avoid red lipstick, too Eastern, too vulgar. You nod in greeting. You don't speak yet. Instead, you sink into the water warm but not boiling. That comes later. A servant approaches with a small ceramic jar. Inside soap. Not like modern soap. This one is thick, made of goat fat and ash mixed with crushed rosemary and a hint of pine. She massages it onto your arms, your legs working in firm, circular motions. Not gentle, not indulgent. You are being prepared. The soap does not foam, but it leaves behind a smell, earthy, resinous, strangely satisfying. Next comes the pumice, a small slab of volcanic stone heated slightly and rubbed along your feet, especially the heels. Roman women must never show cracked skin, not even in winter. It is said that a senator once divorced his wife, not for betrayal, but for dry ankles at a banquet. You believe it, so you endure. The pumice scratches, but you say nothing. Afterward, she rinses you with warm water, infused with thyme and vinegar. Not perfume yet. This is still cleansing. Then the strigil, a curved bronze blade with a handle. She oils your skin, first olive mixed with lemon peel and a drop of almond. Then scrapes, gently, then firmly. Down your arms, your shoulders, across your back. Every movement practiced, mechanical, designed to remove dead skin and oil and invisible particles of dishonor. You close your eyes. It feels like erasure, but you are not being erased. You are being armored. Because in Rome, smell is more than sensory. It is symbolic. To arrive at a gathering without odor is to arrive unarmed. The right scent says you are desirable but not desperate, chaste but not cold, rich but not wasteful. Every drop of amber or myrrh you wear must speak your name when your voice does not. You have one more stop. The laconicum, the hot room. Here the marble floor scorches your soles. You move slowly, adjusting your breath. Sit on the bench carved with lion paws. Let the heat rise. Sweat glides down your spine. This, they say, is the purging. Of toxins, of worries, of weakness. But not of scent. Because as your pores open, your body begins to breathe in what is offered next. A slave enters holding a shallow dish. Amber, melted over a low flame, mixed with cardamom and cinnamon. It bubbles softly, then stills. She dips her fingers, lets a single drop fall onto each of your wrists. Then the elbows. Then the curve just beneath the collarbone. No more. To wear perfume in excess is to confess that your body cannot hold status without help. You rise bathed in layers of decisions you did not make. A cloth is pressed to your skin, not to rub, just to catch moisture. The robe handed to you is light linen, scented with laurel and folded 4 times the correct number for a senator's wife. And now the final touch. A slave kneels beside you. Her task is unspoken but critical. She wears a small mask over her nose, not for modesty, but for precision. She inhales silently, then bows. Approval. Your scent is correct. Your place in the world has been confirmed, and so you are ready. Ready to attend the feast, to sit beside your husband and listen as he jokes with the other men. You will not speak much, but you will be seen. And when someone passes by and catches a faint breath of warmed amber, they will glance briefly. They will wonder. And that is enough. Later, when you return home and the robe is lifted from your shoulders, a new ritual begins. The scent must be removed. Because in Rome, even perfume has a cycle. It must arrive. It must depart. Like favor. Like fame. You lie down on the stone couch in the atrium, arms open, as a final cloth infused with milk and honey is used to cleanse your skin. No trace must remain. Only reputation. And as the lamplight dims and the streets quiet beyond the columns of your domus, you wonder, was the scent truly yours? Or was it just another language you were forced to speak? But that question has no place in this house. You sleep polished, unscented. Tomorrow the amber will return. But far from Rome, in the shaded palaces of the Ottomans, another kind of preparation was unfolding, one where fragrance wasn't whispered behind marble, but carried in silk. The scent of amber still clings faintly to your memory, but it fades now, replaced by something sweeter, earthier. A swirl of crushed fennel seed, dried orange peel, and the iron-rich dust of temple stone that clings to bare feet like memory. You are no longer in Rome. You are in South India, somewhere along the sacred banks of the Kaveri River, and you are no nobleman's wife, no cloistered empress behind incense screens. You are a Devadasi, a woman chosen to serve the divine, not in silence but in movement, in dance, in poetry, in ceremony. And tonight, like many nights before, you prepare, not for a man, not for the court, but for the god. Still, the rituals bear a familiar weight, a rhythm recognizable across dynasties. Because here, too, scent is obligation, cleanliness is virtue, and your skin must speak devotion before your voice does. You sit cross-legged on a woven reed mat in the mandapam, the pillared hall just beyond the sanctum. The sun has long dipped behind the copper dome, and lamps flicker like insects, casting golden patterns onto the stone floor. A woman kneels beside you, her hands stained to the wrists in crushed mehendi henna paste, mixed with lemon juice, tamarind water, and ground eucalyptus leaves. She begins with your palms, not fast, never rushed, each stroke deliberate, almost meditative. Swirls and flowers, tiny deities, a bird in flight tucked beneath your thumb, a pair of dancing eyes blooming beneath the heel of your hand. This is not decoration. It is vow. Every line tells the story of loyalty, of ritual purity, of offering oneself completely, not just in body, but in breath and scent and intention. You keep still. Even as your legs begin to ache, you do not shift, because smudging the lines would be disrespectful, and tonight is important. The Rathotsava festival begins tomorrow, the great chariot procession, and you have been chosen to lead the first ritual dance beneath the god's gaze. That means tonight you must become spotless. It begins with Mendi, but not just the dye. A second girl approaches holding a small copper bowl. She dips 2 fingers in and rubs circles into your palms, scented oil infused with dried orange rind, powdered cloves, and a trace of Ajwain bishop's weed to awaken the skin. She doesn't speak. She doesn't have to. This is not a place for chatter, only breath and motion, the slow unwrapping of daily grime and worldly noise. You close your eyes. The scent is comforting but sharp. It clings to the back of your throat. This is good. It means it will linger until morning. The Mendi woman continues her work. Now your forearms, then the tops of your feet. Each motif is dense symbolic. Peacocks for beauty, mango leaves for fertility, a coiled serpent barely visible along your left wrist for divine feminine energy, Shakti uncoiling through you. Your body becomes a prayer, but even prayer must dry. And so you wait. Hours pass. You sit as still as stone while the paste dries and darkens. A small fan is waved gently across your hands, not to cool you, but to keep flies from landing and disrupting the dye. Beside you, a girl softly chants a passage from the Vedas, the ancient hymns. Her voice is high-steady, like the thread of smoke rising from the jasmine incense burning near the steps. Your limbs are tingling now, not from the pose, but from anticipation. Because once the paste flakes off, what remains is your mark. Not just color, but omen. If the Mendi comes out deep and crimson, it means favor, fertility, welcome. If it fades fast, leaves behind only orange or pale sienna, they say you've been troubled. Or worse, hiding something. You remember the whispers from last month when another dancer's henna peeled by mourning. They said she cried too often, said her heart was restless, said maybe she had fallen for someone she wasn't meant to. She hasn't danced since. You blink the thought away. Focus. Because your own story is still being written across your skin line by line. Eventually, the first woman returns, now holding a smooth strip of cloth, soaked in sugar water and lemon juice. She dabs it gently onto the now dried paste. This will help the stain set deeper, cling longer. Then wordlessly she rises. Your hands are wrapped in gauze, not to protect but to conceal. The color must be unveiled only in the inner sanctum tomorrow, not a moment before. Still, there's more to do. They bring the hair oils coconut warmed over low flame, stirred with crushed hibiscus petals and a pinch of sandalwood. It smells like memory, like youth, like the mothers and grandmothers before you who also offered themselves in this way. The oil is massaged into your scalp, firm, not soft, not indulgent but purposeful. Each rub meant to cleanse, each parting of hair symbolic of a woman devoted fully mind, body, and duty. Then comes the bath, not in a tub, no marble, no silent servants with bronze strigils. Here water is poured by hand from a brass lota, held by a girl no older than you were when you were first brought to the temple. She is silent, eyes down, respectful. The water is infused with crushed vetiver root tulsi leaves and a touch of camphor. You can feel it travel across your skin like breath. Cool, tingling. It doesn't cleanse dirt, there was no dirt left. But it realigns, reclaims, reminds. You sit on the flat stone slab while the water trails down your spine. Not once do you shiver. This is holy water, ritual water. It must not be feared. Afterward, your body is patted dry with cotton, then left to air for a moment, while someone braids your hair 3 strands looped into a thick coil, at the nape fastened with red silk thread. Then, and only then, are you led into the final room. Small, windowless, lit by ghee lamps. This is where your anklets wait. And your perfume. Not applied with fingers, not splashed, but wafted through burning threads soaked in attar natural oils, made from pressed flowers and herbs. The smoke curls around your waist, up your chest toward your face. You do not dodge it. You inhale. It smells of rose and fennel, with a faint trace of ash. Tomorrow the scent must linger beneath your sari as you move across the mandala floor. With every spin it should rise just enough to be noticed by those close to the altar, but never too much. A devadasi must always smell like grace, never indulgence. And yet tonight alone in your quarters, you unwrap your hands, slowly let the first crumbs of henna fall like dried petals to the floor. The color underneath is rich, deep burgundy, even darker than last time. You exhale, relieved. Still part of you aches. Not from kneeling, not from stillness, but from something else. That ache you never name, the one that comes when you're halfway between woman and symbol, between freedom and offering. Because even though you are not anyone's wife or servant, you are not your own either. You are the temple's, the gods, the rituals. Tomorrow you will be the vessel, but tonight you trace the outline of the peacock on your palm and imagine what it might be like to dance for yourself, just once. Outside, a bell chimes. The other girls are sleeping. You curl on the reed mat fingers, still stained scalp, still warm, and dream of a place where scent means choice, where ritual doesn't ask so much, where no one examines the color of your palms to guess your secrets. But that is not for now. For now you are beautiful, sacred, and utterly silent, and far across mountains and rivers, in a different palace of silks and shadows, another woman prepares to perfume herself. Not for dance, but for survival. Not in temple halls, but behind screens veiled in empire. You emerge into the dappled courtyard, where the late afternoon sunlight drifts through palms and hibiscus branches, painting the mosaic floor in flecks of gold and coral. Rose petals laid out earlier in a pattern of concentric circles, soften the hard geometry beneath your feet. You kneel at the edge of a shallow fountain, its water barely rippling, but perfectly still enough to reflect your figure, clothed in pale linen, draped over silk. The air is warm but not stifling, scented faintly with dried orange peel and mint left from the morning. This is the place of ritual. A stone pavilion tucked into the palace gardens, built beneath an alcove of cedar beams and carved latticework. The walls are glazed pale green, the tiled benches cool beneath the cushions scattered there. Today, beneath that gentle green arch, you will be cleansed, but not with soap or with oils. You will be cleansed with rasul clay, and blessings uttered just beneath your hairline in a voice meant only for you. You rise slowly. Behind you, the quiet footfalls of attendants follow with measured rhythm. Not servants exactly, but women entrusted with hands, voices, and loyalty. You are not swathed in velvet or jewels today. Your robe is simple white cotton, edged in fine marjani embroidery, and guarded by 2 female attendants. As you stand, a gust of wind lifts the edge of your robe. You feel the soft weight of satin anklets settling against your skin. They have clinked gently this morning. Now they fall silent, because the ritual begins. One of the attendants kneels before you, eyes lowered. She offers a clear glass basin filled with orange blossom water, faint pinpricks of bubbles shimmering at the surface. You dip one hand inside, lift it, let droplets trace your arm. The scent is flower and green, evocative, but unobtrusive. She passes a shallow clay jar to the second attendant. Inside, fine rasul clay imported from the Atlas Mountains, powdered sifted. No impurities. In Morocco, it was believed that clay cleansed not just the body, but the spirit, draining away what remained from dreams or jealous whispers you picked up unknowingly. You kneel on your reed mat. They begin to wet the clay, not with simple water, but with infusions rose hydrosol mint water, and if the weak has held favor, saffron strands soaked until their color tinges everything soft gold. They mix the paste carefully, chanting low prayers as they do. Words passed from mother to daughter, syllables steeped in spiritual memory. You have never learned them all, but you've heard them repeated, one for clarity of purpose, one for protection, one for fertility and descent, one for strength beneath restraint. First, they section your hair. Each strand is lifted gently. One unnamed elder speaks a blessing as she pulls it partly free of its tie. Ibrahim's blessing. Grace's blessing, a wordless hope for your future marriage or your future independence. The clay is warm at first, then cooling, spreading slowly across roots and scalp. You close your eyes as their fingers move methodically over your head, depositing mud in careful circles, tiny glyphs of beauty you'll never see yourself. The clay doesn't just cling at anchors. Then they apply tiny curls of paste on the temples behind the ears, even behind your knees where fabric rubs. Because ritual in Morocco extended beyond hair, it was full body. Lotus petals, powdered fennel seeds, crushed rosebuds, each offering scented and symbolic. Historians note that women of the palace used rasul clay, not just for cleanliness, but for purification before social or spiritual ceremony, for acts like pregnancy announcements, marriages, or introduction to the harem hierarchy. The mixture was known to be naturally antiseptic, gentle a cleanser of both germs and gossip. You remain silent. The clay sets slowly. You can feel it tightening over your scalp, drawing out whatever lay beneath. Not just oil or dirt, but doubts baked into skin. You listen as the women chant the final incantation. Just soft voices not meant to carry beyond the dome of the pavilion. When the clay is fully dry, they guide you to the fountain's edge. They pour warm, mint-infused rainwater over your scalp, carefully watching the clay release in soft curls of gray and green. You lift a hand scoop water to rinse under your jaw. It's cooling. The scent of mint and rain and mint lime blossoms swirls around you like a veil. When the final rinse is done, you stand and let your hairship drip slowly, pooling at your feet. onto the mosaic edge. You're then past linen towels pressed from the same mint infusion, soft light as smoke to pat dry. They do not rub, they press, respectfully. Now comes the blessing. The eldest attendant returns kneeling in front of you once more. She touches the hollow beneath your collarbone, not the clay patch, not the hair, but the pulse beneath your skin. She closes her eyes. You close yours. She whispers one final prayer. May joy rise in your home. May peace fill your nights. Also a personal counsel, one for patience, one for remembrance, one for self-worth amidst expectation. It's private. It's sacred. You carry it beneath your breath between rib and shoulder. They wrap your hair in fine gauze, gently, not too tight, not too loose. It carries a faint trace of the clay and rose. And you rise. When you walk away from the pavilion, you feel different, not just washed, but rooted. You do not look at yourself in any mirror. You do not need to see, because you sense. Your hair is clean. Your mind is calm. Your scent a soft wash of mint, and rose is exact, not overpowering. Not because you want attention, because here in Fez presence must be deliberate and visible, unless needed fragrant, only enough to command quiet respect. Down the corridor you're handed a robe of soft linen, lightly misted with rose petal water folded perfectly. The weaver of that linen waits in the threshold, linen pressed, folded, and presented. The hem touches your ankles and feels as crisp as the air in the evening. You do not speak. You only nod. Later that night, when you slip into your small chamber walls of Tadalak plaster, cooling with the approaching darkness, you feel your scalp tingle, like residue of ordained magic. A servant brings a bowl of dates and mint tea. You sip slowly. The vinegar and clay still echo faintly in your mouth, but the aftertaste is fresh. You do not sleep. You sit by the window, listening to the call to prayer drifting across the courtyard. It's the moment when the world feels both infinite and closed. If tomorrow comes, you will wear your scented hair to the audience hall, poised behind velvet curtains, ready to serve or perhaps finally to choose. A soft light falls across your closed palms. You press them together, and for a moment, you remember the other ceremonies, the steam of Beijing, the incense of Kyoto, the mendi of the temple dance. Yet here in the hush of clay and whispered blessing, you understand the thread. Cleanliness is not comfort. It is language. It is dignity. It is visibility, but invisibility too. Because when you rise clean, fresh, scented, unseen, you become more than a woman in a palace. You become you, strong, sacred, and strangely free. You walk slowly, carefully down the long corridor, lined with flickering oil lamps. The light doesn't illuminate your face, not fully. Instead, it dances across the slope of your shoulder, catching briefly on the fine gauze wrapping your hair, and vanishes before anyone can fix their eyes too long. Your sandals make no sound. Your robe does not rustle. No voice calls your name. And yet every person you pass knows who you are, not because they see you, but because of what you leave behind. A scent, a memory, a quiet hush of rosewood and neroli tinged with mint, softened by time and skin and ritual. This more than the bracelets on your wrists or the silk hem grazing the tiles is what announces you. This is what stays. For royal women across centuries, from Egypt's golden palaces to the crimson pavilions of Qing China, from Kyoto's incense rooms to Rome's marble baths, the scent one left behind was everything. Not decoration, not indulgence, but legacy. Entire reputations could be made unmade or immortalized by the lingering trace of who you were after the curtain fell or the door closed. You've been taught this since your first day in the palace, that your voice would not echo, your footsteps would not carry, your eyes should not meet others for too long, but your fragrance that would remain, subtle, precise, impossible to replicate. as individual as a thumbprint mapped in sandalwood, rose cedar, and secrets. There were stories whispered over washing basins of concubines who secured favor simply because their scent lingered an extra beat after bowing, of noble women who were dismissed from court for leaving behind a too eager trail of musk, of widowed empresses whose rooms were sealed after death so their bedding wouldn't lose the faint trace of jasmine, of servants whose misfortune was to use the wrong powder and be mistaken for someone above their rank. Even your own attendants know it. They adjust your scarf without touching your skin. They open windows slowly when you pass, so the wind lifts the scent just long enough for someone in the courtyard to glance up and wonder, not who, but which woman, which rank, which breathless story. You don't need to speak to be remembered. You just need to pass by, and not everyone will like it. There are women who will frown behind closed fans, who will say it's too bold, too floral, too noticeable, that a royal woman should leave nothing behind, that a proper scent should vanish within one breath. But others will know better, that sometimes the quiet defiance of being remembered just by scent is the only rebellion you are allowed. In some dynasties, scent was tied to power. The Ottomans measured a concubine's worth in fragrance jars. In Edo Japan, the incense you used could determine which level of respect your guests offered. In Rome, perfume was a political message. In India, temple women painted their scent into prayer itself. And in Morocco, clay-born rituals carried your memory through every tile and shadow, long after you had gone. Because scent is survival and identity. And for many royal women whose voices were never recorded, whose names appear only as footnotes or faded inscriptions, scent was the one thing they controlled. You pause at the end of the hallway. Beyond the last arch, there is music, quiet, plucked from a lyre or a rebab. Maybe tonight you will be summoned, maybe not. You smooth the front of your robe, then continue forward, leaving behind a silence that smells faintly of orange flower and rosemary. And though no one will say it aloud tomorrow, someone will walk this corridor again. A maid with a bucket, a guard with a torch, a midwife perhaps. And they will pause, breathe in, tilt their head, and know you were here, still are somehow, long after your footsteps disappeared. Because long after history forgot your name, it remembered something else. The scent of a woman who refused to vanish. And perhaps that's all you could ever ask for. Not a statue, not a crown, not a song, but to be remembered. For the way the air changed when you left the room. And now, the corridors fall silent again. Another scent fades. Another name slips softly into the folds of forgotten silk. But perhaps as we drift into sleep tonight, we'll hold on just a little longer to the women who were never allowed to speak loudly, yet found quiet ways to endure, in folds of fabric, in ritual, in scent. Thank you for keeping them company tonight. If this story stayed with you, maybe leave a quiet thought below. Or let us know where in the world you're watching from. We love hearing your voices. Until next time, may your night be still, your rest be deep, and your memory linger just like theirs did.